This is BBC News. I'm Rajesh Merchandani. The headlines at 6. 2 military personnel died during a training exercise in hot conditions in the Brecon Beacons. Their families have been informed. Tributes for the firemen who died tackling a blaze in Manchester. 2 teenage girls are being questioned on suspicion of manslaughter.
I've never seen firefighters so shocked and literally devastated.
The system has failed! The system has failed!
Protests across the United States as a neighbourhood watch volunteer who shot and killed an unarmed black teenager is cleared of murder. And in the next hour, it's been a good day on the sporting front.
And a clear audio, and he has given Brad Haddin out.
It's advantage England in the Ashes as they beat Australia by 14 runs to win the first test at Trent Bridge. And Chris Froome stretches his lead in the Tour de France with an outstanding victory in the 15th stage. Good evening and welcome to BBC News. 2 servicemen have died during a training exercise in the Brecon Beacons in Wales. A third man is in a serious condition in hospital following the incident this afternoon. Next of kin have been informed, and the Ministry of Defence says it's investigating the incident with police. It's understood live ammunition was not involved, and investigation taking place will focus on the weather conditions and the nature of the training exercise. Well, let's go now to the Brecon Beacons, and our reporter Ellis Roberts is there. Ellis, let's start with you first of all. We're going to talk to our correspondent in London outside the MOD as well, Sangeeta Maiska, but I think Ellis is down here. There you are, Ellis. Yes, thanks for joining us. Difficult, dangerous terrain.
Certainly is, there's no question about that. I'm standing here on the main trunk road between North and South Wales, and it's the A470, and anyone that travels along this road regularly can tell you. You will frequently see military activity and training taking place here. And in a sense, there's a strange harmony between people that come to the Brecon Beacons to enjoy the scenery. There's a mountain opposite to where I am now, Pen y Fan, where people walk up and enjoy. And sometimes only a few hundred yards away, you can have the SAS training at the same time. It is regarded as the ideal kind of territory for training. But as you said, one factor in this investigation will be the effect of the weather. Obviously, Dyfed Powys Police will look at the nature of the exercises that were being undertaken. But also, it was yesterday the hottest day of the year in Wales so far, and temperatures in parts of Powys reached 30 degrees. And whilst that may not compare with the deserts in Afghanistan, could it possibly have been a factor in all of this? Well, that's definitely one question that everyone is asking at the moment. So just give us an idea, Ellis, of where you are in relation to where this exercise, this fateful exercise, was taking place. Well, we don't know exactly where the exercises were taking place, but the reality about this area, South Powys to Brecon Beacons, you can see military training taking place very, very frequently indeed. Just up the road from here, the Army has a base in Brecon, and then the infantry, they as well conduct exercises in Sennybridge, which is only about 5 miles away. This is an area that has a very close connection with the military. There's plenty of open spaces here, and so it is very much an ideal area for this kind of military activity. But what we're not sure about is what exactly happened that tragically led to the death of 2 members of the armed forces yesterday. We have done an interview with the Mayor of Brecon. He himself has emphasised the connection with the military here, and obviously sending condolences as well to the families affected. OK, Ellis Roberts in Brecon there. Thank you for bringing us the latest from there. We can now talk to our correspondent Sangeeta Maiska, who's outside the Ministry of Defence in Westminster. And Sangeeta, what are the MOD saying about what happened?
A very straightforward statement coming from them earlier this afternoon. Really, Rajesh, simply saying that 2 soldiers have died, a third is in serious condition in hospital. The next of kin and the coroner have been informed, and confirming that news, as you were mentioning, that they are now working with Welsh police to investigate the circumstances that have led to these deaths. They say that there are 2 lines of inquiry that are going to be pursued. One, as Alex was saying, are the weather conditions. The second is the nature of the training exercises. It's worth saying that this isn't the first time that the conditions on the Brecon Beacons have proved fatal to military personnel. In January this year, an army captain thought to be training for the SAS died in January when he was on a freezing cold march in grueling circumstances.
OK, Sangeeta Maiska outside the MOD, thank you very much for joining us. Our correspondent Ellis Roberts also in Brecon, bringing us up to date on that breaking news this afternoon. 2 teenage girls have been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter after a firefighter was killed tackling a blaze in Manchester city centre. 38-year-old Stephen Hunt worked at the Phillips Park station. Another firefighter is being treated in hospital after being pulled from the blaze at a hair product supplier. As our correspondent Lisa Hamperley reports.
The city centre business where a fireman died. Inside the hair and beauty retailer was a storeroom which was full of dangerous chemicals. Stephen Hunt and a colleague were inside when they got into difficulties, and the decision was made to evacuate. They were pulled out, but 38-year-old Stephen, the father of 2 teenagers, died. His colleagues are devastated. They've been damping the blaze down today. Staff and customers were inside when the fire began, and initially they tried to stop it spreading. But at the peak, 60 firefighters took it on. Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Services are working with police to establish the cause. 2 teenage girls have now been arrested. Crews are expected to remain at the scene. The second firefighter pulled from the building is now recovering from his injuries. Lisa Hamperley, BBC News.
Well, our correspondent Stuart Flinders is at the scene in Manchester. So, Stuart, can you bring us up to date with the latest in the investigation?
Yes, well, I can tell you that the 2 15-year-old girls who were arrested in connection with this fire on suspicion of manslaughter have now been released on bail until September. The other... can you hear me?
Stuart, we can still hear you.
Yeah, the
You're
other
telling us about the investigation.
news I can bring you is... Yes. So that's the latest in terms of the police investigation. I can also tell you that we've had a statement in the last 15 minutes from Stephen Hunt's family. This is the fire officer who died here. They describe him as an old-fashioned gentleman with manners that are rare in this day and age. Stephen lived to serve his country, having served for 7 years in the Royal Signals before he became a firefighter, a career he was very proud of, they say. And they say the whole family will miss spending time with Stephen, none more so than his son, daughter and grandmother. We loved his sense of humour and are very proud of him and what he brought to our lives. That's a statement from Stephen Hunt's family, the firefighter who died here last night. And now the fire itself broke out on the other side of that building. You can see the fire officers are still hard at work here. It broke out in a hair products company, and I had some information from Steve McGurk, who's the senior fire officer here, about what happened.
Well, at this stage we're still investigating the cause of the fire. It actually started around about 10 to 3 yesterday afternoon when the building was occupied. There were people in the shop and people in the store. A couple of people tried to tackle the fire but were then overcome, and they in fact have been taken to hospital. And the fire just really developed extremely rapidly from there, and within half an hour with something like 40 firefighters, and within an hour with over 60 firefighters tackling the blaze. So it developed incredibly rapidly and became a very serious fire very quickly indeed.
What were the materials in there that made it so difficult?
Well, there are certainly a lot of hair care type of products and chemicals involved in that. You know, most people will be familiar with things like peroxide used in hair care products, but the place was a proper retail outlet and had huge amounts of combustible materials stacked inside the building, stored inside the building, but also in day-to-day use. So effectively it's incredibly high fire loading as well.
How did one of your officers come to be hurt?
Well, at this stage, we don't know exactly what happened. Around about 8:30 last night, so we'd been here tackling this blaze for a number of hours by this stage, but we were really struggling to get into the heart of the fire because of the heat and intensity of the smoke. And for some reason, we declared what we call the BA emergency, which is really a signal to evacuate the building because something has happened. One of the firefighting crews pulled out 2 of their colleagues. We had the ambulance in attendance immediately, who rendered first aid straight away. Did a fantastic job trying to help their colleagues, and we got them straight off to hospital within a matter of minutes. Tragically, one of our firefighter colleagues, Steve Hunt, was declared dead at the hospital, and our other colleague, Jeremy, was seriously injured, but thankfully not critical or in a life-threatening way.
What can you tell us about the man who died?
Sadly, I didn't know Stephen personally. He's been in the fire service about 5 years now and was extremely well liked by his colleagues and obviously his friends and family. And it's just it's a bit of a cliche to say it's a tragedy and everybody's devastated, but they really are. I mean, I've been in the fire service over 30 years now. I've been a chief fire officer for 14, and this is the first time I've transcribed something like this happen to me. And I went and met all the crews at 1 o'clock this morning when we debriefed the crews immediately after this had happened. And I've never seen firefighters so shocked and literally devastated. And I've seen some horrendous incidents over the years. And I think that level of devastation, I suppose, is a testament and tribute to just how light Stephen was and how popular he was with his colleagues, and words like sort of consummate professional are used. And I know they sound cliche, but it is the kind of thing that people say about colleagues like Steve.
Well, that was Steve McGurk, Greater Manchester's most senior fire officer, talking about Stephen Hunt, who died here yesterday, 38 years old, a father of 2 teenagers. And because a fire officer died here, there will be an independent investigation. But as far as the police investigation goes, the latest is that the 2 15-year-old girls who were arrested on suspicion of manslaughter have now been released on bail until September.
OK, Stuart Flinders in Manchester, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on that story. Now, a jury in the United States has acquitted a neighbourhood watch volunteer of murdering an unarmed black teenager in February last year. George Zimmerman shot dead Trayvon Martin in Florida, but he argued that he acted in self-defence. Well, protesters who were angry at the acquittal held largely peaceful demonstrations in 3 Californian cities. Our correspondent David Willis reports from Florida.
We, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
A dramatic conclusion to a trial that has captivated and divided this nation in roughly equal measure. George Zimmerman, a neighbourhood watch volunteer, never denied shooting dead an unarmed black teenager called Trayvon Martin. But he said he did so in self-defence, and the jury agreed.
As happy as I am for George Zimmerman, I'm thrilled that this jury kept this tragedy from becoming a travesty.
We are very, very, very saddened, but we accept the jury's verdict in this case. First and foremost, on behalf of Tracy Martin and Sabrina Fulton, who are just heartbroken.
Trayvon Martin was walking home when he was spotted by George Zimmerman, who was sitting in his car. Convinced Martin was part of a gang that had been targeting the local neighbourhood, the prosecution claimed George Zimmerman pursued and then provoked Trayvon Martin as he headed into this private apartment complex. Zimmerman's lawyers countered by saying their client was the victim of a vicious assault. There were no witnesses to the confrontation that followed, but a neighbour's call to the emergency services picked up the sound of cries for help, followed by the fatal gunshot.
Do you think he's yelling help? Yes. All right, what is your...
By the time the police arrived, Trayvon Martin was dead.
You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
Such was the sense of shock and outrage here that even President Obama became caught up in events.
You know, I think they are right to expect that all of us as Americans are going to take this with the seriousness it deserves, and that we're going to get to the bottom of exactly what happened.
Protests that started here in Florida soon spread across America, fueled by the fact that it took the police 6 weeks to charge George Zimmerman with murder. Citing state laws permitting the use of firearms by those who believe their life to be in danger, the police initially agreed the Neighborhood Watch volunteer acted in self-defense. The full details of that confrontation may never be known. Lawyers for the defense and the prosecution differed wildly in their interpretation of events on the night in question. Instead of laying the matter to rest, there's a fear the jury's verdict may only serve to reopen old wounds. George Zimmerman left the courthouse behind me a free man, but freedom is a relative concept in this case. He continues to receive death threats, and even his lawyer conceded he seems destined to spend the rest of his life a marked man. David Willis, BBC News, Sanford, Florida.
I'm just going to bring you a little bit of breaking news we're getting now, and authorities in Iraq are saying that at least 15 people have been killed and dozens wounded after a string of explosions struck several cities in the south of the country, south of Baghdad. The explosions happened, you remember it's Ramadan now, and just as the day ends, a big meal takes place that's called iftar. The explosions happened at around that time as people were actually breaking their fast. And the reports say that there are deaths in at least 5 cities, so a string of powerful explosions. You remember that Iraq is experiencing a year of terrible violence and terrible death tolls with explosions and attacks all over the country. Some people are actually worried that it's heading back towards the widespread sectarian violence that it was experiencing back in 2006 and 2007. But the headline from that story, at least 15 people dead in a string of explosions across Iraq. Let me bring you some more headlines now on BBC News. And 2 military personnel die in an exercise on the Brecon Beacons. Their families have been informed. 2 teenage girls held on suspicion of manslaughter after a fireman died tackling a blaze in Manchester. They're released on bail. Stephen Hunt's family described him as an old-fashioned gentleman. Protests across the US against a jury's decision to clear the man who shot dead the unarmed teenager Trayvon Martin. And in a moment, the latest from Belfast, where 7 police officers have been slightly injured after a second night of violence over the annual Orange Order parades. Now, in France, the President François Hollande says much more needs to be done to maintain French regional rail lines as investigations continue into the country's worst rail disaster for 25 years. 6 people were killed when a train derailed south of Paris on Friday. Anna Holligan reports from the scene.
This is the entrance to Brittany-sur-Orge rail station. Eyewitnesses have described it as now looking like some kind of post-apocalyptic nightmare. The crane has been manoeuvred into position and is now trying to lift one of the carriages that was sent flying into the air and came careering down onto the platform. There were an estimated 385 passengers on board at the time, many others standing waiting on the platform, looking forward to the start of their summer holidays. If you look just behind the stop sign here, you'll see the steps leading up to that platform. The rescuers say they aren't expecting to find anyone else alive. This is the location where the investigators have been focusing their search for clues at damaged carriage number 2. They've been walking up and down the tracks over the last 2 days, searching for scraps of evidence. Today, on this national holiday, they have been replaced by local people who are equally curious to find out what happened, what caused this crash. The rail operators are now checking 5,000 similar points across the French rail network to ensure that similar problems don't exist elsewhere.
Stanley Holligan reporting there from the scene of that train crash just outside Paris. Now to Northern Ireland, where police say 7 officers have been slightly injured in North Belfast during a second night of violence. Trouble flared when police attempted to enforce a decision to ban an Orange Order march from passing the Republican Ardoyne area. An extra 400 officers from around the UK have been drafted in following the clashes.
The police have found themselves on the front line in this dispute about parades. They've been attacked with petrol bombs, bricks and bottles, and for a second night in a row, the worst trouble has been in North Belfast. At the exact spot where a contentious march was stopped on Friday night. The police were simply enforcing a decision made by others, but they've now become the target of frustrations and anger. For most of the day, protests had been peaceful. Unionist residents stood holding banners and flags near the stretch of road at the centre of this dispute.
The Parades Commission is an unelected body that makes decisions that affect the sovereign citizens of Northern Ireland. Who have they the right to tell you can't walk a public road?
But the disputed march near a nationalist area does raise tensions. Hundreds of extra police officers were brought to Northern Ireland from elsewhere in the UK ahead of the 12th of July. After this weekend's violence, they've been joined by hundreds more. The trouble associated with contentious marches is an expensive and an annual issue for Northern Ireland. The politicians have set themselves a Christmas deadline to try to come up with some sort of solution to the problem of parading. But ask anyone who lives or places in these areas and they'll tell you that it's not going to be easy. There continue to be appeals for calm, but it's clear some people just aren't listening. Chris Buckler, BBC News, Belfast.
The Canadian actor Corey Monteith, who is best known for his role in the hit TV show Glee, has been found dead. The 31-year-old who played Finn Hudson in the series about a high school singing club was found dead in a Vancouver hotel room. Local police say there's no indication of foul play. The actor had voluntarily entered rehab for substance abuse problems in April, as Keith Adams reports.
In Glee, Corey Monteith played Finn Hudson, a high school athlete who swaps the football pitch for the stage. The show has been an international smash hit, with its kitsch dance moves and cheesy cover versions of classic pop songs. Its success turned Corey Monteith into a superstar. He was found dead in a Vancouver hotel room on Saturday when he missed his checkout time. Police said the cause of death was not known, but there'd be an autopsy on Monday. At a press conference, they paid their respects.
On the behalf of the Vancouver Police, I want to pass on our condolences to the family, friends, castmates, and millions of fans of Mr. Monteith. As was the case in countless homes, I watch Glee regularly with my daughters, and I know there will be shock and sadness in many households with the news of his tragic death.
One of Glee's main plot lines was Finn Hudson's on and off romance with Rachel Berry, played by Leah Michele. And in a gift to gossip columnists, the actors playing the parts became a couple in real life. But the other highly publicised aspect of Corey Monteith's life was his battle with addiction. He told one interviewer he took anything and everything. The Canadian had a troubled childhood and admitted to using drugs and alcohol by the time he was 13 years old. Fans and fellow celebrities have expressed their shock and sadness at the news of his death. Zooey Deschanel tweeted, "What an absolute tragic loss of a very talented young man." The pop star Taylor Swift has tweeted, "Speechless, and for the worst reason." And one fan has tweeted, "They said December the 22nd, 2012 would be the end of the world. But they gave us the wrong information because my world ended today." So the entertainment industry is mourning the loss of a versatile actor and musician who shone brightly, but too briefly. Keith Adams, BBC News.
Now, when the weather's as good as this, the idea of an afternoon fishing by a cool lake can sound very appealing. But despite being thought of as Britain's biggest participation sport, it's actually in decline. There's been a drop of almost 50% in the number of children taking up the pastime. Joe Tidy has been trying to find out why.
For generations, angling grandparents and parents have delighted in passing on their intricate fishing techniques to the younger generation. But in the last few years, their grandkids haven't turned up.
The Environment Agency says fewer kids are picking up rods these days. Let's ask these first-time fishermen why.
Because they think it's just a bit boring.
What things are more fun and popular these days?
TV.
TV. What else?
Xbox. Computers, texting.
Kids below 12 can fish for free, but a junior rod licence is needed for 12 to 16-year-olds at a cost of £5.
In 2009, just over 77,000 junior rod licences were bought between April and June. A steady decline in the last 4 years has meant that number has dropped 44%.
You're going to catch a lot of fish with.
And the picture for adults isn't looking great either, with a drop of 21% over the same period.
Yeah, I do believe it's a problem, and we want to see youngsters coming into our sport. I think one of the main reasons is the age of the computer or even the telephone now. It's instant success on these little gadgets, whereas in fishing, of course, you do need that time and effort to become a decent fisherman.
And it's not just retailers who are suffering as the sport shrinks.
All the money that we get in from angling actually goes back into protecting the environment. So the less money we have, the more risks we have then for fish populations in our rivers.
How much is the loss of income then in the last 4 years?
We're certainly running into a few £1 million, and because of that, that's beginning to curtail some of the things that we'd like to do.
The Environment Agency hopes to turn the trend around by holding taster sessions like this.
Big spiky fin as well.
Whoa.
So you've enjoyed yourself today and you'll be back?
Yeah, definitely.
Have you enjoyed it?
Mhm.
Do you think you'll be back?
It's 50%
50-50. The challenge ahead is to persuade enough other children to come back to the riverbank to keep this sport afloat.
Prosecutors in Egypt are to investigate complaints of spying and incitement to kill protesters made against the deposed President Mohamed Morsi. The allegations also include attacking military barracks and damaging the economy, but the prosecutor's office hasn't said who lodged the complaints. Emily Thomas reports.
These protesters have been here outside Rab al Adawiya Mosque in eastern Cairo for almost 2 weeks now. As night falls, their numbers grow. Crowds of tens of thousands calling for the reinstatement of the ousted president. Mohamed Morsi was deposed by the army on the 3rd of July in response to mass protests. He's now being held at an unknown location. His supporters, many of them members of the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood movement, say the military's actions amounted to a coup. In the past few days, Germany and the US have said the deposed president should be released, but that's unlikely to happen anytime soon. Egypt's public prosecutor's office has said it's investigating complaints against him and other members of the Muslim Brotherhood. They include spying, inciting the killing of protesters, attacking military barracks and damaging the economy. It didn't say who'd filed the complaints. Pro-Morsi protesters have reacted angrily to the news.
These people are raising these accusations in order to get rid of everything to do with Mr. Morsi. If Mr. Morsi disappeared, I would say, well, the country is made up of millions of Morsis. The issue is not about Morsi. The issue is building a state of rights and justice.
Across the city, these protesters in Tahrir Square have been showing their support for the interim administration led by President Adli Mansour. He's forging ahead with a swift timetable to amend the now suspended constitution. He plans to hold elections early next year. But the criminal investigation into the ousted president could weaken the already remote prospect of a reconciliation between the interim authorities and the Brotherhood. And until that happens, there seems little hope for an end to the unrest. Emily Thomas, BBC News.
Now, something of a technological milestone today. It's the final day that it'll be possible to send a telegram in India. The service will officially close at midnight, having begun in the days of British rule in the 19th century. At its peak 30 years ago, before the creation of a reliable telephone network, there were 45,000 telegraph offices across the country. Now they're just 75. Rupa Jha met some people in Delhi who were sending their last telegrams.
Like many in India, Shubh Dayal has relied on telegrams to share both good and bad news with her friends and family.
See, the telegram person will come with his khaki uniform, with a tin, 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 tin sound, telegram tar, and one person will go and receive it, and until the person opens and, tells us what the news is. Everybody will be, with a heavy heart or a thumping heart. I hope it's a good news.
Today, she's sending a special final telegram to her granddaughter to mark the end of an era. This and all the other telegraph offices across India are closing down. It's nearly 162 years since the first official telegraph line opened in India, a service for official use only. By 1855, it was open for the public, and it revolutionized the way people communicated. Short messages were supposed to reach within 48 hours. It was never a cheap service. Even today, it costs much more than sending a text message from a mobile phone.
एक फॉर्म दे दीजिएगा टेलीग्राम वाला. Thank you. I'm sending my first ever and probably the last telegram from one of Delhi's oldest and biggest telegraph offices, which used to send hundreds of telegrams every day. Now it has come down to a few hundreds in a month. This place must have been full of people tapping the dots and the dashes of Morse code on telegraphic machines that has been replaced by computers now. In fact, till 1980s, telegrams used to be the mainstay of fast communications in the country.
But with the technology becoming digital, now people don't have to wait for days to receive important messages sent across the vast length and breadth of the country.
I usually use internet, I use text messages, I make calls to people when I try to connect to them. And yeah, that's it. If I want to know about Telegram, I'll Google it.
India's telegraph service has for years depended on its messengers like Rohtash Singh. In the job for more than 3 decades, today he's going to deliver Shubh Dayal's last telegram to her granddaughter. As the internet and mobile phone network is spreading out to even the remotest parts of India, the era of the telegram is finally over.
No other child is ever going to receive these papers. You're the lucky one.
Rupa Jha, BBC News, Delhi.
Okay, it's time now for a look at the weather with Helen.